It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you can control. Take control of the airways with 855-450-3733. Again, that's 855-450-FREE, as in freedom. With you tonight, it's Aria.
And Mark. Yeah, we've got quite a crew in here. So, Aria, you're sitting in the first chair where I normally sit because, well, you're not going to learn how to do the first chair without doing the first chair, right?
Good point.
Yeah.
Well, I do it for Call to Freedom as well. The only difference is, how you guys take calls and how you dump calls.
It's true. You no doubt have proven yourself to be highly qualified for this position, and I may just give it up because it's not like it's desirable or anything.
I don't know. I enjoy doing it.
I'm glad. So. Look, you can drive. I don't care. And Dave Ridley from the Ridley Report, you are here and hanging out. I guess you have some big plans for Keene?
I don't know if I would call them big, but they might be interesting.
Okay. Well, tell me about. Can you tell me briefly where you tell about your website real quick?
I run RidleyReport.com. It's like a poor man's TV station, and it's known mostly for I do ambush interviews of politicians and bureaucrats.
Very awesome.
And it's not
so they don't see it coming. You catch them like when they're eating dinner or something. Or are you more tactful than that?
I go to government meetings, small, usually local government.
Just when they're not expecting it.
Local and state government meetings, and confront politicians who never get asked questions by any reporters about anything difficult.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I will have to check this out then.
Oh, thanks. Well, you're too late because I am reimagining the Ridley Report, and that's why I'm here today.
Okay. So
tomorrow anyway. Yeah.
Tell us about the dream you have for it as it stands now. What do you intend to do with it?
I am switching, at least some of the time, into more of a street theater mode, so that now the government buildings, instead of waiting for the meeting to happen, I can do something with them just because the government buildings are standing there. So I've got a series of speeches written up. I have a complete Winston Churchill costume. I am going to deliver a series of speeches as though I were Churchill denouncing the Nazis.
Do you put a pillow in your belly?
Do I need one?
I don't know. I mean, I think you. Yeah, I imagine Churchill as being a little more rotund than you.
I'm honored that you think that. I've got a few years to go. Then I can continue being Churchill, First Lord of the Admiralty, instead of Churchill, Prime Minister.
I'm pretty sure that Churchill, First Lord of the Admiralty, had hair, didn't he?
Not when he was. Well, he had hair when he was. He had hair when he was the first time he was First Lord in 1915.
Yeah.
Or 1910, whenever he took office. But
when he was in World War I.
Correct.
Yeah.
That is an extensive amount of knowledge about Churchill.
Yeah, I could probably pass for a history professor.
The two of us talking about Churchill? Yes. I will certainly concede that Dave knows more. I just happen to know what Churchill looked like in World War I and then in World War II. These are the times when he is sort of most interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's a speech from him from 1909, and he already sounded like him to some extent. His voice was higher.
But he was definitely a good orator.
Yeah.
So your plan for the relaunched Ridley Report is to dress like Churchill routinely, or is that just a one-off thing?
No, it'll be pretty routine. I've already done a series of speeches. You can already find them on the channel.
Okay.
Just speeches into the camera. But for instance, tomorrow I'm going to go to the spot where Tom Ball burned himself alive here in Keene. And
hold on. Who and why?
Go ahead.
I'm new to Keene.
People forget just how crazy Keene can be. There was a guy in 2011 who was upset with the government, and in protest, he walked up to the Superior Court building and set himself on fire and died.
Yeah. To add to that a little bit, he had a situation, a run-in with the family court, and basically wasn't allowed to see his kids over what appeared to be pretty normal, like child discipline. And I would presume that the wife, who, with the divorce occurs, that she's, not wanting him to see the kids. It's not like that's never happened before, right? And that, just sort of the kerfuffle around this is, made a mountain out of a molehill, as it were. And I'm not saying that he should have struck his child, but the striking was never, no one contended that blood was drawn or that anybody was sort of hurt or anything like that. It was just, parent discipline kind of thing. And, he just stopped getting, he just so demoralized by his experience with family court. and having to pay child support, not getting to see his kids, and not getting listened to, and not feeling heard, that he decided that it was better to die. And he put together a whole sort of treatise about how to set courthouses on fire across New Hampshire.
So if I go there tomorrow, I will not be setting them on fire, but I will be in a Churchill costume, and I will say this at the end, quote, "It is for him to know if his spirit still hovers above this spot, so quickly and desperately laundered of his corporal evidence, that a serene yet momentous struggle still endeavors on in this often happy state of green hills and prodigious forests."
Yeah,
very nice.
When he says that the spot was quickly laundered, it's true. Basically, this guy commits suicide by self-immolation on the courthouse steps.
That is not a pleasant way to do it.
Nor a common way to do it. And all evidence was gone by the next morning, except for a burn mark that no one, that you wouldn't necessarily know was there, what it was or why it was there.
Interesting. So Keene was able to get out presumably a contractor, to clean up that probably a significant and disturbing mess by the next day. Yeah,
and I believe that it's the most searched page on freekeene.com, which is Ian Freeman, our normal first chair host. That's his blogging site. I believe that the Tom Ball page is still page number 1 on that as far as all-time visits. And what was interesting is basically we were told, and the press generally was told, basically, you guys shouldn't talk about this. The family doesn't want you to. And by the family, they meant the ex-wife that wasn't letting this guy see his kid.
So the person who
drove she doesn't want you talking about it.
Yeah, the person who drove him to suicide was not a fan of you talking about it.
They painted, Mark, your facts was a little off.
Okay, good. Help me out.
They painted over the burn mark by the next day.
Okay. So there was a burn mark shortly thereafter, and then they painted over the burn mark.
That's correct.
What color did they paint it?
Just whatever concrete color.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know how one paints concrete color.
That is a really extensive, especially for a town government, that's a really extensive cleanup job.
Oh, I mean, it's very important to Keene that it appears as though you really like the tyranny that they dish out. And, what's easier to do? Apply some paint or actually change family court to be just?
Well, from what I've heard about family court, it's certainly not just, and that doesn't seem to be likely to change anytime soon. Yeah. I didn't know until recently that there was no appeals process for the American Family Court, and that once a judge makes a decision, that's it. Yeah. There's no overturning it.
I haven't had to deal with them, but we've had so many people call in that have. It's really sad. It's not just although it's an issue for men largely. It's there's in many cases they take people's kids and give them off to somebody else, and then you've got women hollering about it too. I mean, basically, family courts are stepping into really ugly situations in many cases, and attempting to have solutions with no accountability. And we know that people who have no accountability tend not to make the best decisions. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, do you want somebody who has no accountability making decisions for you in your life?
Certainly not. I mean, especially something as major as, because I went through family court as a child, and they never made a decision. They just left it in perpetuity hanging unanswered. And that was worse than just not being involved in the first place.
I'm not saying family court can't make good decisions. I'm sure they have at some point in their past.
Well, a broken clock is right twice a day.
But, again, they're not accountable. So when they choose not to make a decision, that's a decision. When they, make the wrong decision, they should be responsible for it. And nobody's responsible for anything when it comes to these systems.
No, but an appeal process would be great. I think that would probably be a good first step in getting these family courts in line.
It seems reasonable that you would have at least as much protection as you do in other areas of court in the United States.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case. And because of all of this, someone named Tom Ball, did I write that down correctly?
Yep.
Set himself on fire. This is Free Talk Live, 855-450-FREE as in freedom, 855-450-3733. This is Free Talk Live, talk radio you control. Take control of the airwaves using 855-450-3733. With you tonight is Aria,
Ridley,
and Mark.
And you're relaunching the Ridley Report. Is there anything else about that you would like to share with us?
I don't know if relaunch would be the right word. It's just adding different kind of content, which may start to suck all the air out of the room. There won't be as many confrontations with government officials as there used to be. There'll be more Churchill imitation. And there's some reasons behind that. He's a figure who there really is no other figure in American culture that is more, I don't know, identifiable and usable and interesting, and he's a bad guy in some ways, right? Like if you're imitating George Washington, you're imitating a bad guy too, probably to some extent. But Churchill has this mix that it's really as good as it gets in government officials. He has this mix of good and bad. There's good mixed in there, and there's so much brilliance. So he's something you can really take him and run with him. So,
do you characterize yourself as a libertarian?
Yeah, basically, I'd be considered an anti-aggressionist, I guess would be the right word.
Okay, I'm just curious what good qualities within Churchill you are referring to.
The defiance against totalitarianism, the opposition of both Nazis and communists, the relatively benign treatment of vanquished foes, and the just the general.
I mean, the British Empire under his leadership was pretty harsh to their colonies like India.
Well, yes, but not as harsh as the other empires have been to their, so it's, and again, you see these little things, yes, he's bad, but on the other hand, he's doing all this negotiation to try and end this war, that war. And the Ireland thing was where it really showed itself most. The dichotomy really showed itself because he was really in charge of the black and tans that were doing all those atrocities to the Irish rebels and the Irish civilians. And on the other hand, he was doing everything he could to get that war over with as fast as possible. That's the reason the Irish War of Independence only lasted about a year and a half, is because Churchill's like, we can't keep doing this. We've got to stop.
Interesting. I didn't even know there was a war for Irish independence.
Mm-hmm.
That is good to know. Let's go to the phones. We've got Tom, who is calling in from Hudson. Tom, you are on Free Talk Live.
Yes, good evening. I don't know if you can hear it in your headphones. A lot of people don't seem to realize when they listen to Free Talk Live on the radio, the callers who are waiting on the line can hear the listeners who have the radio on when they're having an argument in their house. And one thing I want to point out, they know who they are. There's that couple that's having an argument, and one of them keeps shouting at the other one, would you please shut up? There's one thing I want to point out to people, and, they can download this edition of Free Talk Live and play it back when necessary to somebody who doesn't understand this principle, and that is that your opponent's comment could take on a whole different meaning if the interrupter would shut up and listen to the second half of the argument, such as when I've been interrupted saying that liberty is the freedom to do whatever you want that doesn't violate anybody's rights. My critics would interrupt me at the word want and accuse me of saying that and respond accordingly, and I urge them to shut up, and sometimes they would shut up, sometimes they would not. But when it comes down to, I cannot take your word for it until I have your word on it. Just tell me, do you have another sweetheart? And the interrupter butts in on, I cannot take your word for it, and runs off to file for a divorce. Well, maybe why don't they shut up and listen to the second half of it? It's very important. So, like I say, in the morning you can download this edition of Free Talk Live and play back this call, and maybe your opponent will understand. When I'm telling people, for example, that Northern Ireland is not part of Great Britain. It's part of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. They interrupt, and, it sounds like you're an Irish Republican Army sympathizer when you say Northern Ireland is not part of Great Britain. But if you simply finish the sentence, they've heard the name of the official title of the state, and that proves.
Tom, I hate to interrupt you, but have you ever considered learning the German language? What you're referring to there is an issue with the language. English is a front-loaded language. We put the vast majority of our meaning at the very beginning of the sentence. So by the time somebody gets to the middle or the end, they've either interrupted you or tuned you out entirely. Germany, in the German language, it's the opposite. Most of the meaning is loaded into the rear of the sentence.
Sprechen Sie
so then,
Deutsch?
What they got to do then is find a mate who can understand German, though. And when you're going on some of these dating websites, and it kind of narrows down your options, don't you think?
I mean, you don't have to necessarily speak exclusively in German to achieve that effect. You can also just take extreme care to reword yourself in English.
Ich weiß es nicht.
Yeah, or the other one can shut up and listen to the second half of it. And
it's always best to let somebody finish their sentence. But I mean, it's not like I've never heard people who. It's not like when somebody calls in with a particular argument. In many cases, as a talk show host who's done this hours, like thousands, many thousands of hours, I've probably heard your argument, whatever it is, already. So if there's some tweak at the very, very end, then, maybe try to front load it as best you can. I don't know. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it would take more people doing the backloading of the meaning in order to get people to really stop interrupting. But that's how conversations seem to flow. And it's difficult to get used to because I've always attempted to not interrupt people and to resist people interrupting me. Well, it's not just here on the radio that it becomes critical, but it's just in daily life.
Yeah, the notion that talk show hosts need to let people go all the way through their sentences is widely accepted by callers. However, that's not what we're taught to do.
Not widely accepted by listeners, I bet.
Yeah, it's the problem is that once you say, "Well, I'm going to let you get all the way through your sentence without stopping and asking a question or clarifying or doing any of these other things," then the person doesn't stop talking.
Yeah,
they don't take a break. They just keep on prattling on, and then at what point do you just wait for the break, bring them back on, and then say, "Okay, so I want to get a little clarification," and do this 12 times until the show's over?
Hopefully not.
Well, but I can tell you, there are callers out there that would think that's the only fair way to do it. And then, if you didn't at the very end of it say, "I agree with you completely," then you didn't listen.
I know that one is a thing.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people are just, so accustomed to not being able to get a word in that when they are given the chance to speak, they just sort of prattle on indefinitely until they're interrupted because the ability to speak or the time in which to speak becomes sort of a more limited resource than it really has to be.
People will ask me, because I do interviews in part for Free Talk Live, and people will ask me, what are some of the crucial things that interviewees need to know? And basically a talk show caller is an interviewee. Or at least they should aspire to be. That way they're kept on long enough.
Yeah, and if we're asking questions, it means we're intrigued.
And an interviewee should end their sentences. Speak your thought, get all of your thought out, answer the question, and stop talking. That way somebody can then go on and get a little more depth. Because if you keep on talking about the same thing, you never get any depth. And you're like, why didn't you let me go on? Well, because we're limited by time. You hear the music?
Excellent point. This is Free Talk Live, 855-450-FREE as in freedom, or use the Discord servers at discord.lrn.fm.
Free Talk Live has found that though U.S. financial institutions are prohibited from doing business with foreign gambling websites, it's not illegal for U.S.-based internet users to gamble on those sites. People have been using VPNs or virtual private networks to connect to sites like games.bitcoin.com and play games with Bitcoin Cash. Games.bitcoin.com features poker, blackjack, roulette, craps, keno, slots, and dice. You can conduct your own investigation at games.bitcoin.com.
This is Free Talk Live. Take control of the airways. That number is 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. With you tonight is Aria,
Ridley,
and Mark.
And Mark, you brought in an interesting hit piece about Tulsa. I don't remember
Tulsi
her name.
Gabbard.
Yeah, I knew it 10 minutes ago.
So she's kind of become the darling of libertarians at this time for whatever reason.
Is she a libertarian?
No, she's a Democrat. Okay. She's running for the Democratic nomination for president. And you got to take what you can get around here, right? Like at this point, the Republicans and the Democrats aren't running very many libertarians. So many times libertarians will pick a candidate, that they like for whatever reason. And in her case, I like her for this reason, mind you. She's pretty darn anti-war and doesn't mind articulating it.
Didn't she stop by Matt Simon's house the other day?
I don't know.
One of the major Democrat presidential candidates, I think, did, or maybe it was a Republican. It was a woman who's relatively pro-liberty, and I thought it was Tulsi Gabbard.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a free stater in New Hampshire, one of the libertarian activists.
Excellent.
I don't know if she was at his house, but she was pictured with him, and she was at an event, I think, that was connected to free staters.
So is she anti-war in the sense that she speaks out against war,
yes,
or does she actually, in real terms, attempt to use her elected power, whatever it may be, to resist the war machine? I mean, does she vote no for the subsidies to Lockheed Martin?
I don't know. I don't know that much about her. I haven't spent any time digging into this lady other than sort of, oh, well, here's somebody who says some stuff that I like.
Okay. Fair point.
At this point, when you're talking about a presidential election, you just have to take the politician that's telling you the lies you like. And when I vote,
I want to say you're wrong, but you're not.
When I vote for a presidential candidate, I understand, well, my vote is largely meaningless. And, whatever you're donating, especially early in the campaign, is probably the most important thing you can do for a candidate. I'm talking about even $5, $10, $15 or something. These things can be very meaningful because it gives feedback that what they're saying is important. For me, I only have one issue when it comes to president, because the president only has one power, really. They sign the laws that Congress makes into existence, and they could make those laws harder to get into existence through their veto power. But other than the veto power, they are the commander-in-chief of the U.S. military.
Right.
Right now, Democrats are talking in the House like they have power to prevent the president from making moves with the military. I like that coming from the organization who determines whether or not we declare war as a nation.
They do, but didn't they surrender that power with the War Powers Act?
They got some of it back with the War Powers Act, didn't they?
The claim from the House of Representatives is that war with Iran does not fall within the purview of the War Powers Act,
except for the war part.
Well, the evidence is that a president can pretty much do what they want for 60 days and then begin to ask questions. So,
right.
An air war could be launched by Trump on Iran, and there's the guy that's just willing to do it, by the way, just to prove he could, which is very bad news. But, what can the Democrats in Congress do? I'm not saying I side with the Democrats.
They can defund the military.
It's a way to go.
You vote no. You just vote no.
Agreed. These are good ideas. I'm all for these ideas. I'm a one-issue voter. That issue is peace. The reason I vote for peace isn't because I dislike the people in the military. It's because, they voted for Ron Paul over and over again.
They did.
They wanted an anti-war candidate, and it's the hawks, the chicken hawks on the Republican side that have been shoving pro-war candidates down the military's throat over and over again. These young men and women made a pledge to go out there and catch bullets for war hawks, and I think they got tricked, frankly.
I think most of them did.
But I'd like them to come back. I'd like everybody's kids to come back if we could. Let's just stop fighting. Let's not attend the war party and see what happens. And so Tulsi Gabbard is my kind of candidate. She's telling me the lies I like to hear. Maybe she's telling the truth. I don't know this lady, but she's saying some things I like. But here's a hit piece. Well, you can't talk like this without the hit piece. So Tulsi Gabbard.
Oh, no, the war establishment is not a fan of peace.
It's the single biggest, most important lobby out there. If you're not asking questions about it, it's because you've bought hook, line, and sinker their lobbyists' lines.
Yeah. So this makes me like her more, and it makes me consider the prospect that she may indeed be an anti-war candidate if they're bothering to write this sort of lunatic hit piece about her.
Tulsi Gabbard has only just launched her 2020 presidential campaign, and yet she's already attracting support from some of the most controversial entities in American politics. Take, for example, the Russian propaganda machine that sought to sow division in the United States and influence the nation's 2016 election. An NBC analysis shows sites linked to Russian influence operations
I'm so scared.
Celebrated Gabbard's announcement.
Hold me.
I love the Russian influence. Okay, so there's an advertising platform that a lot of Americans use. If you're not American, when you use that platform, you're an influence machine, I guess.
Yeah.
Or something.
Well, I mean,
the Russians are making memes, and it's destroying our democracy.
Never mind that their military is, it's been 12% as much as the Americans do on their military per year, and that's what we're scared of. Where the United States have easily scared people.
Either the United States is full of people who are scared of the truth, or they're scared that Americans will believe lies very readily. I'm scared of the second, but. As far as
we know they believe lies pretty readily because they accepted that the Russians hacked the DNC and leaked Hillary's campaign scheming or whatever during 2016. They're still talking about the Mueller report. They're still talking about the Russian troll farms that hacked the election, even though it's been demonstrated repeatedly that there was no vote hacking whatsoever. And at the end of the day, what they mean is that they're unhappy that some Americans were influenced by some Russians.
Agreed. And I would say that if they're influenced, it's because some of those people were saying the truth or something close to the truth, some version of the truth. Maybe that's in short supply in American politics. Maybe when people run for president, I'll never forget this. Dan Mitchell, a local talk show host here in Keene, New Hampshire, he gets all the presidential candidates when they come through. Every single one of them wants to get on a local radio station and talk and tell their BS, right?
Right.
Every one of them.
A lot of softballs being lobbed to them, that sort of thing.
He gets Ron Paul on. Now, Dan Mitchell's a Democrat.
Okay.
I don't think he says it, but he is. And, he's asking Ron Paul.
Is that the Republican in you talking?
It's the person who can listen to Dan Mitchell and determine. It doesn't take yes, I'm a registered Republican, and yes,
so am I, to be fair.
But who knows where I'll vote unless Trump takes me up on my offer, which is to pardon Ross Ulbricht, in which case I will absolutely vote for him. And other than that, my vote's up in the air at this point.
Well, the thing is, when you vote for president, it's important to make sure you vote for the loser, the person who loses. Don't ever vote because so-and-so, if I don't vote for him, he won't win. This other guy might get in. If you vote for someone and they get in, you become responsible for everything they do.
I don't look at it from that standpoint, but what I would do is vote my heart. My vote is inconsequential from a statistical standpoint, right? No president has won yet based on one single vote. Even in one state, it just hasn't happened. So therefore, my one single vote, the only one that I get, is only going to the person that I can stomach the most. I realize that's a low bar. They have to qualify for winning in enough states that they could win. So I'm willing to entertain the Libertarian or the Green, depending on and maybe another party if they another minor party if they manage to pull something off. But other than that, anyway, to finish the Dan Mitchell story, he'd said to Ron Paul, "You're the only politician that has ever answered my questions when I asked them." He may not have liked the answers to the questions, but these people are liars. They get training in lying before they go on the trail.
And Ron Paul was refreshingly direct.
I'll tell you what's happening with Tulsi Gabbard here in a minute.
855-450-3733. That's 855-450-FREE as in freedom. This is This is Free Talk Live. Talk radio you control. Take control of the airwaves at 855-450-3733. With you tonight, it's Arya,
Ridley,
and Mark.
And before we get back into the subject of Tulsi or Tulsa?
Tulsi.
Gabbard, right?
Gabbard, yeah.
Gabbard, okay. We've actually got Sarah calling in from New Mexico. Sarah, what's on your mind? Your own Free Talk Live.
Yeah, I believe that, our high pedestrian fatalities here is one of the big reasons why we here in New Mexico we have like a low economic growth. So
okay, well, why don't you attach those two together for me?
Well, that's what I'm talking about. You know, that's what everybody says. You know, they say, well, our traffic fatality has nothing to do with job creation. It's got nothing to do with businesses moving here. This is what they always say.
Okay.
You know, they do everything else, but
well, generally, when you paint a connection between two things, it's generally your job to show the connection between them.
Right. Well, that would be general rhetoric, but you know, starting off with people say it's not true isn't the best way to argue this, Sarah. So, do you have any connection, or it's just like it's a feeling you got?
Well, yeah. It's my opinion, you know, because there's.
But what's it based on?
Other people
Anything
that are from here. I mean, there's people that are convinced. If I was to ask in, he'll say he has nothing to do with there. People that will say it has nothing to do with businesses moving here and job creation and people moving out of our state. But it does everything. But to me, it has a big impact because it's public safety. You know, this is a very dangerous place for people to live. You know, you can't go for a walk. I mean, you can't drive without worrying about like 3 cars running the red lights and getting T-boned.
Don't you guys worry that you're going to hemorrhage listeners whenever she calls?
I don't. I think it's you know. No, I don't.
I mean, I just tuned out for the last 5 minutes. I have no idea what she said. I know she's boring every time she calls.
You are hyper concentrated on New Hampshire. But, you know, apply this to where you are. Does pedestrian safety affect, you know, things in your town? I suppose you could make the argument, but I think that quite generally the answer is no. I mean, you know, more or less. I don't see much connection here, Sarah. As I understand it, there's as many pedestrians that have problems in New Mexico as there are cars that have problems. Sarah thinks that anything with 4 wheels is a death machine. So,
Sarah, thank you for the call. And, you know, of course, she's not wrong. But what fascinated me most about the whole thing she was just saying was that, you know, she has no facts to base this up whatsoever. It's just a feeling she has.
That's basically
and
what happened.
It's just her opinion that there is this connection between economic growth rates and pedestrian fatalities, which there may or may not be. But solely on her feeling about it, she wants to propagate it out into the world as though it's something that people should take seriously. When I'm more inclined to disregard people when they say, I feel this or I feel that.
Yeah, I don't care what you feel.
No, I want to know what you think.
Well, and more importantly, I want to know what you know. I want to know what the facts are. And then we can start splicing the facts together to make a mosaic on what's going on. I've been wrong plenty of times, but hopefully I'm wrong based on facts rather than that I put together in sort of the wrong way.
Right.
Rather than, sort of anything else. I'd much rather talk about facts rather than, I think this. I have an opinion, and I think that everything lines up with that opinion without facts. Not going to be useful.
Definitely not. So, what exactly is the hit piece that is now targeting Tulsi Gabbard?
So this is from the independent.co.uk. So already, line number 2 in this, they have linked Tulsi Gabbard to the Russian propaganda machine. Now, they're not claiming that Tulsi Gabbard has somehow gotten...
Well, they will if she wins, though. Well, she was conspiring with the Russians.
Perhaps, but you'll see, this is what they did to Ron Paul in... I think it was both 2008 and 2012. Is they found the most distasteful people that supported his campaign, and you can always find them.
Well, he didn't help matters with his racist newsletters, and allowing people to write things in his name did not do him any favors.
Agreed, and there was more than one instance where it occurred. However, you've got to let people write things in your name. As a talk show host, I understand I can't generate the content that people may demand from me. If somebody wanted a Free Talk Live newsletter, and we do send out a Free Talk Live newsletter, go to freetalklive.com and you can sign up for the newsletter there. But if they wanted it like a daily kind of piece or something, I'd have to have a ghostwriter come in and take care of that. hopefully I've got a ghostwriter that's completely on board with my way of thinking. However, if you're like Ron Paul and you've got a ghostwriter who's 99% on, but that one glaring percent does not pick up what you're doing. Also, look at this. This is the 1990s, not 2008 when he was running. So, I mean, these are more than a decade old writings. And, yeah, I think that the Republicans implemented a racially biased standard back then. So, the worst things that they say, they're sort of, if you've ever been robbed by a black man, you know how fleet-footed they are. I'm, it's you shouldn't just go and connect black men and robbery. However, nobody argues that there's more black guys who are winning foot races in the Olympics than there are white guys. So, there's some sort of a basis of truth to this. And, yeah, it's tough. I don't support it.
Right.
I wish it hadn't happened. But that's not what kept Ron Paul from winning.
No, you're certainly correct. It was the media refusing to even acknowledge his existence.
There's that saying, by their grievances shall ye know them. So if your grievance is that somebody said something that was not quite perfect about,
or somebody allowed something to be said.
Yeah, about 25 years ago, that's your grievance, then you're talking about the good guy.
Yeah, it's got to be, because I've lived 48 years now, and people, when they try to besmirch me, they generally go about 30 years back in order to get something on me. Because I've lived a pretty good life since some pretty bad stuff happened. And, I don't in any way try to say that stuff wasn't bad or terrible, but that's what they do every time, because they don't want to spend any time talking about what my ideas are.
Right.
Let's talk about the Independent talking about what Tulsi Gabbard's ideas aren't. So the NBC News analysis shows that sites linked to Russia-influenced operations celebrated Gabbard's announcement when she said on CNN she was expecting to launch a formal bid in the coming weeks and defended her position on Russia in her 2017 meeting with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, and attacked those who have suggested she is a pawn for Moscow. So somebody doesn't want to go to war. They're a pawn for Russia.
Pawns for Russia. Those were called Democrats during the Cold War, when there was actually a threat.
I don't know. I don't know that much about it. The analysis looked at a slate of major English language news sites Russia used in efforts to impact the previous election and undermine Hillary Clinton's candidacy against Donald Trump, with several experts who track the Kremlin's digital operations noting that they've seen what they believe may be the first stirrings of an upcoming Russian campaign of support for Gabbard.
Well, yeah, I think if I was, a Russian, I would similarly support the American presidential candidate who did not want to go to war with my people. To me, that just seems like a standard position to take.
If the Democrats believe that the Trump administration colluded with the Russians, and many of them do, then they should discount this story, because maybe it's the Republicans feeding this to the Independent so that they then write this hit piece. This is so nonsensical, all of this.
Oh, absolutely. And we haven't even gotten to the most bizarre allegations.
Right here, the Hawaiian lawmaker also received a full-throated, wouldn't you say endorsement, from David Duke, a leading white nationalist and former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. Mr. Duke posted a photo on his Twitter banner of Ms. Gabbard with a statement reading, "Tulsi Gabbard for president, finally a candidate who's actually putting America first rather than Israel first." So,
did he in fact do that?
I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, if it's in a news story, surely they did. They made the check. I didn't check their Twitter feed.
But being supported by a racist is not necessarily the end of the world, simply because she doesn't want. I would say that not dropping bombs on foreign countries is an American first policy.
Would you like to hang out with Penn Jillette? He's keynoting Freedom Fest this year. I, for one, am thrilled. Freedom Fest is the largest liberty-oriented gathering in the world. They take a Big Ten approach with libertarians, conservatives, liberals, anarchists, capitalists, and just open-minded people mingling together to hear real debates, share real solutions, and converse freely. This year's theme is the Wild West, a time of liberty and opportunity, or a time of anarchy and violence. Maybe both. Go to freedomfest.com/FTL and get your tickets now. freedomfest.com/FTL. Not convinced yet? Hey, I understand. It's a high-end event. Even with coupon code FTL50. Sure, you're likely to receive investment advice that'll make that sum seem paltry, but I have something special for you. Go to freedomfest.com/FTL and you'll get the 5 best speeches from last year for free. Call it a test drive. Do yourself a favor and go to freedomfest.com/FTL. freedomfest.com/FTL. Use coupon code FTL50 for a discount.
Free Talk Live.
That's right. You're listening to Free Talk Live. Talk radio you control. Taking control of the airwaves using 855-450-FREE as in freedom. That's 855-450-3733. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Ridley,
and Mark.
And we've been talking about Tulsi Gabbard and this hit piece, and you know how this sort of attack piece also has affected Ron Paul in the past, and it's sort of a common tactic, more common than it should be.
It's pretty common when you don't want to spend time thinking about a candidate. I can't say it's not news when a white supremacist is supporting a particular candidate, but I think that I think it's kind of tough, right? Okay, so the white supremacists supported the Democrats for a very long time.
Yes.
Strom Thurmond was in office well within my lifetime. As a matter of fact, Hillary Clinton supported him. Democrat, white supremacists, right? The whole deal. Then the Republicans sort of became the party of white supremacists, and now we have to hunt down how many white supremacists support this candidate or that candidate. It's getting a little weird. Tulsi Gabbard isn't a white supremacist, and to put her name in a sentence with white supremacists is crappy journalism.
Now, is she even eligible? It says here that she was born in American Samoa.
She's an American citizen.
That does count as an American citizen, one of its territories?
I would presume that you would have to get an opinion from her lawyer, but that sounds fine by me.
Okay. I mean, I'm good with it. I think the requirement to be a natural citizen or to be 35 years old, both of those are arbitrary and should be thrown out.
Well, I was starting to wonder, actually, whether it was actually a requirement that you be born outside the United States in order to run for president, with all McCain and Obama. And I mean, I don't know what happened with these guys, but it seems like everybody that gets close to it, after a while you find out, hey, they may not have been born in the U.S. or they may not have been a citizen or something like that.
Yep. I think that's probably been the case going pretty far back, but lately we become so nationalistic and so afraid of foreign influence that the possibility that we might elect a president who isn't a Christian or isn't American, because for so many people, even among the Democrats, those two things are pretty closely tied together.
Well, it's the only qualification for the job.
Yeah, if you say you're an atheist, you're not becoming president.
Well, that's not a stated qualification. I will agree with you that atheists are going to have a difficult time getting the office at this point. I think every year that goes by, the glass ceiling for atheism gets higher and higher, or thinner and thinner, depending on however it is. And at some point it'll go away before we even know it has gone away. That Americans aren't that interested in that. They didn't need to see Obama go to church that often in order to make it really comfortable. Whereas for George Bush, you had Republican, churches praying to cardboard cutouts of George Bush.
Did you? I know they're essentially doing that with Trump.
Yeah, I think it's Jesus Land or something. Well, it's a good idea to if you believe that praying is an effective means of changing the world, then you should pray for the president. However, to only
they were praying for George Bush.
Yeah.
Well, see, they're praying to Trump for all intents and purposes.
Well, you can make the claim,
they call
whatever.
him. I mean, they call him the savior and things like that.
It's insanity.
It is not they, as in a large portion of Christianity, but some people, some Christians in the United States, absolutely consider Trump to be God's chosen one or whatever.
So 6 paragraphs in on this independent article, they say, none of this is to say that Ms. Gabbard has sought endorsements from white nationalists or foreign adversaries. Rather, she's denounced Russian influence operations meddling in U.S. elections and has disavowed white supremacy and the likes of Mr. Duke. I'll bet you the Russians don't care what you or a Democratic candidate or anybody else thinks about their posting memes about the presidential election in the United States. I mean, if your election system is so fragile that the posting of memes somehow breaks it, it needs to be broken.
I would certainly
agree. You need a more
agree.
robust system.
But I think it's more insidious than that. I think a lot of people want to section off the United States from the internet in the same way that the European Union is doing, in the same way that China is doing, so that we can just sort of isolate ourselves from the rest of the world and can be truly controlled by the state at that point.
Yep, that's what they want. They want regional internets. You're right.
And I'm not a fan of that. And I think this sort of Russian hysteria, I mean, we've already seen them use it to make Facebook crack down on political dissenters. We saw Cop Block go away. A number of anti-state websites, just not websites, but pages disappeared from Facebook. And it was spurred by this Russian hysteria. I mean, how much further is it going to go before Google search results automatically filter out websites because they're known to be linked to Russia?
It's going to keep on going until the American public says, stop it.
The only reason people are so against Russia at the federal level these days is because Russia's not a threat anymore. When Russia was actually a threat, they were prancing all over the Russians.
Well, they did some pretty crappy things in the last decade. I mean, the taking over of Crimea, the way they did it wasn't exactly, kosher.
Yeah, where is Crimea in comparison to the United States? Again, it's where it happened. By the location of their grievances shall ye know them. Right?
If the United States decides to take over Cuba, I'm not going to support it just because it's geographically close to it.
Right.
And I don't support the taking over of Crimea, even though the Crimea, maybe the Crimeans should have been given a real opportunity to vote to bring the Russians in, and maybe they should have had international people, counting the votes, whatever it takes. I don't care. And then the Russians blow the Netherlands flight out of the sky. And that's a real problem. Civilians get killed in this situation, and then they don't want to cooperate, which, of course, guilty parties tend not to want to cooperate. So I'm not a big fan of these folks, but when it comes to meme production, this isn't collusion. But this isn't news.
With Eastern Europe, remember how far away the American forces were from Moscow back in 1990 when they promised they weren't going to get any closer. And every year they've gotten closer, much, much closer. And whenever you hear about these, there was an incident with a Russian bomber in NATO, and you look on the map at how close it was to Russia, it's always like that. Yeah. It seems like it's.
Well, we definitely have surrounded them with military
We're acting
bases.
like the Warsaw Pact used to act. The Americans were relatively the good guys in the Cold War, and the Warsaw Pact was the one that was, wow, look how close they are to Berlin now. But now it's the shoe is on the other foot.
Agreed. I agree with you that it takes two parties to fight a war, and the United States is by no means the party that has just been sitting there and getting bullied or anything like that. 100%. But
I don't know that I would agree that the United States was even the good guy during the Cold War. I mean, to me, neither of them was particularly good, but both sides were instigating the violence and trying to escalate it while keeping it from actually erupting beyond their control.
Well, there was one side that had more military offensively deployed, and that was the Russians during the Cold War. That's the way it was. Now it's the other way around.
I don't think it's fair to say that. We've been waging war across the world since the end of World War II.
Well, the Russians during the Cold War would have attacked had the United States done more with NATO than they had. So they were sort of feeling this situation out. I mean, they were in aggressive posture, and we were very close to a nuclear war with the Cuban Missile Crisis. It was just, by sheer luck that it didn't go off at that time. Those were, dicey times, and I'm not here to defend Stalin by any stretch of the imagination. Anyway, Tulsi Gabbard says here, I've strongly denounced David Duke's hateful views and his so-called support multiple times in the past and reject his support, the Democrat said in a recent statement to media outlets. A spokesperson for Ms. Gabbard, Erica Tulji, also said in a statement to NBC News, it's ridiculous to suggest Russia supported her presidential bid. So
it's ridiculous, but that won't stop them. This is Free Talk Live, 855-450-3733. This is 855-450-FREE as in freedom. Give us a call. That's right. This is Free Talk Live. Talk radio you control. Take control of the airwaves with 855-450-3733. Or give us a call using the Discord call-in lines, which you can find at discord.freetalklive.com. And we've been having a discussion about Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah. She's the kind of sweetheart of the libertarians that I see on Facebook these days.
Which is interesting. I haven't seen any libertarians come out and support it, but I'm very rarely on Facebook. I spend as little time as possible on Facebook. It's basically just to promote or post the daily podcast from Call to Freedom or to post about Free Talk Live.
I support that. More or less, the time you spend on Facebook should be very limited. I think that Facebook is a nice place to promote whatever you're doing. It's supposed to be a very effective ad platform, as I understand it. It is a good place to share the pictures of your sort of family with your family and friends or things like that. Maybe share a few recipes, chit-chat about a vacation, things, more or less use it as an online journal. If you don't mind the fact that the federal government is, paging through it and that you're putting down things for, future employers. But don't spend time there. Like, there's these keyboard activists that go on Facebook and they attempt to change people's minds on Facebook. And I think that you could, in my opinion, you could not waste your time more. If this statement offends you, 855-450-3733 and talk about whatever it is that you wanted to talk about on Facebook, unless you're chicken. Because Facebook is just a place where people go to argue about dumb crap.
It is, but in their defense,
I posted, don't spend time arguing with morons on Facebook, and 3 morons tried to fight with me about the statement.
I'm ready to be the next moron to fight with you on that.
Okay. How many people have you convinced of anything?
I can't fight with you very precisely. I can't fight with you with precisely what you said. You're actually right in the narrow sense that if it's just trying to change someone's mind, that's not useful. But anytime you're getting eyes on a useful pro-freedom project of any kind, it doesn't matter whether the eyes are on Facebook or Reddit or CNN or whatever. It just matters how many eyes there are.
I would say that if you have a well-designed meme that somehow gets people to think about the ideas of liberty, great. However, as a guy who's done, I did activism at the border of the United States where I tried to make the Customs and Border Patrol Agency produce reasonable, articulable suspicion for detaining me. All right? Like 1,000 years of English common law says that one needs to have reasonable, articulable suspicion for detaining somebody, but they detain thousands of Americans per day, if not tens of thousands of Americans per day, asking them for their citizenship. And all I want to know is what is exactly the legal justification for this? Because I don't believe the Supreme Court has answered this question particularly well.
You want the state to explain itself?
Yes. So
I would love that, but I don't think it's likely to happen.
And I produced a video. Well, not that I expected the state to explain itself, but I at least expect Americans to understand that, the government's required by its own laws to do certain things. And one of the things is when it detains you is to have reasonable articulable suspicion. And instead of these people saying over and over again, because all you had to do is tell them your citizenship.
That's not the point.
Well, duh. Like, you think I sat in there as a guy, like a family man, 48 years old. Well, I guess at the time I'm probably 46, 45 years old. And I didn't know that all I had to do was give my citizenship? I mean, seriously, if you can figure out how to work a keyboard, you should have enough IQ points to rub together to know, I know that I don't need to worry, all I had to do is say my citizenship. I did it 3 times before that. I know. Well, it was actually 2 times.
And they still detained you?
No, it was at different stops.
Okay.
I worked my way up to this. I had 4 different stops. The first 2, I gave my citizenship. The third one,
were these in the same journey? Like, were you traveling down a highway and had to go through 4 of these checkpoints, or were these like spread out over weeks?
We traveled across the United States in 3 weeks in a car, and so these were in a variety of different locations.
Interesting.
In one location, I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" is what I asked him. And he's just waved me on. So, this time I realized, well, if I'm going to have to be very confrontational to deal with it. And I actually got sort of amusingly enough, I don't know how to say this without sounding like a pompous American, but the whole crew were Hispanics, right? With accents.
The Border
Patrol. Huh. Hispanics with accents, asking me for my citizenship.
That's a new level of Stockholm
Collaborators.
And maybe they got their citizenship. Maybe they were born here and they had accents. Whatever. I don't know the specifics of it, but it was just kind of amusing. And here I am. I'm saying, do you have reasonable articulable suspicion that I'm not a citizen? Or whatever, something. You need to state something to detain somebody, and They didn't. And just the general public. I think the general public, they aren't very moved by activism when they see it. And maybe you'll get a couple of good people here and a couple of good people there. I don't know, but I'm pretty jaded on activism as a solution to things these days. I think Dave Ridley's probably going to get a lot of views on his Churchill stuff just because Dave Ridley's great on a microphone, but. What's it going to result in? I don't know.
I am speechless with obsequious appreciation.
No reason to grovel. Dave.
Well, what vehicle for change or impacting people would you prefer? Facebook is out. Activism is out.
Sure. So you got to convince people, right? So in the United States, what you've got to do is convince people.
Not necessarily. So you just have to mobilize the ones that are already convinced.
Okay.
So infiltration of the arts, perhaps?
Well, I think you could call into Free Talk Live.
Right, I meant more encompassing, though. Perhaps like some libertarian
200 radio
writer.
stations is pretty encompassing.
Absolutely. So is that it? Just it? Radio shows are how you can reach people?
I find words to be very convincing. Maybe I'm wrong, but I find them to be convincing. I don't find people get broken out of their little worlds very much. I think you have to, as Dave advocates here, you have to have a certain concentration if you're going to see some level of change. But I'm not even sure that level of there has yet to be demonstrated, that actual freedom can be created, like a scalable freedom can be created by doing concentrated activism, like getting a bunch of activists together. I think it's a good idea, but the Free State Project was as far and removed, the most successful, has not yet managed to achieve this, and I don't know if it ever will.
No,
but all the other options, not just the other geographical options, but the other political options, like using Libertarian Party or whatever, that has all worked worse.
Yep.
Everything has worked worse in the Free State Project, except for Bitcoin.
If you want to be free, the closest analog to freedom is wealth. So work hard, make money, stop listening to the man. How's that?
That's great advice.
The more you got, the more they can take.
Tell us what's on your mind. This is Free Talk Live, 855-450-3733. That's 855-450-FREE as in freedom. Or use the Discord call-in lines, which you can find at discord.freetalklive.com.
Business owners, you want more customers? Accept cryptocurrencies. There's people all around you just waiting to spend money at your store. If only you would take it. I know, you've been waiting till someone else makes it easy. Well, good news. HelpMeTakeBitcoin.com adds Bitcoin to your point of sale, totally free. Use the same equipment you already have, now with Bitcoin. And unlike credit cards, there's no fees. Let the guys at HelpMeTakeBitcoin.com bring new customers to your store. HelpMeTakeBitcoin.com.
This is Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control. Take control of the airways with 855-450-FREE as in freedom. That's 855-450-3733. Or if you want clearer quality, you can use the Discord call-in lines, which you can find at discord.lrn.fm. And is there any more to extract from the story about Tulsi Gabbard?
We've sort of milked it as much as they can. This Independence, this article from the Independent here in the UK is about as blatant of a hit piece as I have ever seen on a politician.
Oh, and the Independent. It's in the Independent.
The Independent.
So they're a foreign agency trying to influence American elections.
That's correct. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. So they're complaining about the Russians. They're complaining about the white nationalists. They're complaining that Tulsi Gabbard is...
They're complaining about foreign agents influencing American agents elections while being exactly that. Yeah.
Here's what my favorite. There's a little video here with a link. It says, Tulsi Gabbard, presidential hopeful and defender of dictators. This is, wow. This is the war machine and its most blatant bits of propaganda at its finest. I mean, you get an opportunity to see it here. It's just so visible. And
this is from the Independent, right?
Yeah.
Aren't they a UK-based website?
Yes. That's okay. What we just discussed here is that they are a foreign agent apparently attempting to use facts to and there is nothing here that sort of, they don't talk about any of her policies that are positive. They say she's supported by the Russians, she's supported by white nationalists, and at one point her opinion on the gay community wasn't good enough.
But she doesn't have a finger collection. She doesn't run a torture chamber at Bagram Air Force Base. She hasn't violated children and then wiped out their families to cover it up. So she's got to be taken down. That's what the establishment that's accusing her, that's what the establishment has done. That's what the U.S. government and its murderers have done.
You're talking about actual war crimes, and in many cases they've been defended until they were no longer defensible.
Trump is pardoning them.
Yeah, well, they're working on that very much. This is what it's all about, is that these companies that make things that go kaboom realize that every once in a while, they got to have a new conflict so that they can spend all the munitions they've built up over time so that we can then have the new conflict. It's not good enough that the military goes out every single year and dumps ammunition and munitions so that they can then buy more in what they called spend ops. But it's necessary to go out and deplete all of these things at higher rates and all this stuff. I mean, like, the value of war is so mitigable, but these people will make whatever opportunities they can. They'll take whatever opportunities they can to go after anybody who speaks against the war machine. Anybody. Yeah. I mean, Free Talk Live has been attacked on this issue multiple times. Radio stations.
They came through the door.
What's that?
They came through the door.
Yeah, well, the FBI came through. I'm not 100% sure why the FBI targeted Free Talk Live, but I can tell you they never sent us another piece of paper. They came in here, they stole something like 90 pieces, dozens of pieces of electronics equipment, and the only time we ever heard of them again was when we were like, hey, we've had another incident, and then they came and stole one more computer. They actually kind of traded for it, but they made an involuntary trade. They gave us a camera that didn't have any memory back. But I haven't heard anything from them.
No, and you never will.
I hope not.
No, it was about attempting to shut down what you were doing, I think.
It's a theory, but if they wanted to shut us down, they would have done different things.
You think so?
If they really wanted to shut us down. So you can look behind you. There's two big computers and server racks over there. And those computers, something similar to them, were in place at the time.
Right.
They pulled out those two computers. There's 4 hard drives in each of them. Mm-hmm. One of them, they pulled out 3 of the hard drives and left 1 in it. The other one...
They know that's not how RAID 5 works, right?
I don't know what RAID 5 is, but I bet you do.
It's a redundant array of inexpensive disks. It's backup hard drives, essentially.
So did they get all the information by taking 3 hard drives?
Yes.
Okay, good. That's great, because I didn't know that. I thought that leaving 1 hard drive would be a weird thing to do, that if you're taking things like thumb drives out of people's desk drawers and stuff, that leaving a hard drive in a computer doesn't make any sense. And then on the other one, they took 1 hard drive and left the other 3. And to me, these sound like very strange behaviors.
Those are strange behaviors.
It sounds like a threat. It says, all I need is 1 hard drive because I'll find whatever I want on it. Thanks very much. Bye-bye. That's what it sounds like.
Well, I'm assuming here that the studio servers use RAID 5, which is 4 hard drives, sometimes more, but they all have exactly the same data. So that if one of those drives fails, all of your stuff is still safe.
I don't know.
I would assume that. But it's certainly not practical to take one of those drives and then have to rebuild the entire array.
Okay.
That's not the best way to go about doing it. Nobody who works in IT feels happy when they're told, oh, we need to rebuild this array.
They could have taken any piece of electronic equipment here that they wanted, and they left all the pieces for us to run a radio show that night. They busted in at 6 a.m., and by noon, everything was set back up.
Wow.
For us to run a radio show. And then we run a fundraiser, and then the listeners paid for all new equipment. Thank you, Virgil Vaduva.
So it wasn't so it definitely wasn't a direct attempt to shut you down. Certainly not. Not if you were back up and running.
Allegedly, I heard they made a comment to the effect that they wanted to make sure they didn't shut you down that night.
Yeah, that's what one of the FBI.
And that's good. That's good.
He said he wasn't going to shut us down. But what they didn't say, if this would have made a lot more sense, is just picking up the phone, ring, ring. Hey, is this Mark Edge? Yeah, I hear you got a family. This is John Smith from the FBI. And I hear you have a family, and I just want to let you know, you need to shut up about the FBI. You've stepped across some lines here, and bad things are going to happen. That would have been so much more effective than busting in some kind of weird raid and confusing.
It's not the federal way. They're like the old Yugoslavs. They're not pure. They're not pure evil. They have this procedure and they have this way of doing things, and it hurts people, but they could do a lot worse. Does that make sense?
It could be, but then somebody writes in an email, this weird email that says, we're the ones who planted child porn on your computer. By the way, there's no evidence that child porn has ever been found on these computers.
Of course not.
They've actually never demonstrated that there was evidence that there was a download, although somebody could have used the network that we gave up. At least 100 people had access to the network Wi-Fi password at that time. Because, this is a radio show, and when people come in and use the studio, we give them a Wi-Fi password, or did back in the day. Now you don't. But, I don't know whether anything was downloaded through the network. I don't know anything because the FBI refuses to protect and serve me with information.
Have you submitted a FOIA request?
No. I'm not asking these people with anything. The last time I saw them, they took 80 pieces of my electronics equipment.
Okay, but they didn't take any of mine, so I'm going to submit this FOIA request.
All right.
And I will let you know how it goes.
I'm curious about those 80 door stops that they have of mine. These computers that I will never use again. Can you imagine?
Did I say they're not evil? I should have said they're not pure evil.
Yeah. I think you said pure evil.
Okay, good. Gotta be precise.
Well, if somebody would have called in, and if they would have called me up and said, you don't know what you're talking about, and you should keep your mouth shut about things you don't know about, that wouldn't have been a necessarily evil statement to make.
But would you have assumed such a person, if they called and said, this is John with the FBI, you need to watch what you're talking about, keep our names out of your mouth, would you have actually taken that seriously?
I would be the one that they would be most likely to believe that would, if you understand.
I do.
So I don't know whether I would or not. When threats are made, you have to sort of assess them as they're made.
True.
And I don't know. I mean, would I listen to a threat made? Yeah, I'd listen to a threat. Sure. Now, how would I react? I don't know.
See, I think by default, I would just assume it was somebody trolling or messing with me in some sort of capacity. I wouldn't expect it to actually be a Fed, because it would just be so foreign to how the Feds normally operate. that it wouldn't seem to be sensible to assume that it was, in fact,
a Fed can give you a telephone number at the FBI agency to call them back on.
Ah, there you go. Yeah. That would be alarming. This is Free Talk Live, 855-450-FREE as in freedom, or use the Discord calling lines at discord.freetalklive.com. This is Free Talk Live, 855-450-FREE as in freedom. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Ridley,
and Mark.
And we've been talking about Tulsi Gabbard, which followed a discussion about the Ridley report and some changes being made to it. And we actually are joined now by Bad Slave, who is calling in, I think, from New Hampshire, correct? Bad Slave, you are on Free Talk Live?
Yes, from New Hampshire is correct. Thank you. Great to talk to you guys. Thanks for being there. Good to see you, Dave.
Hi.
And Mark.
Jesus, I'm right here, Bad Slave.
Huh?
Nothing. Go ahead.
I wanted to talk about Facebook because, since it came into being, I originally didn't want to get on Facebook. I took a chosen name and became a nom de plume. And I went ahead and I did that with my mobile phone too. And so I have somewhat of a barrier. It's kind of broken down over time. But I have operated within this realm of Facebook, which, I think is probably the one place that the New Hampshire Liberty people gather. I mean, of any other place. There's
don't they gather at forum.shiresociety.com?
They do, but that's just a subset. Not nearly the size. I've got over 1,300 friends on Facebook, and they're all kind of liberty related somehow. Not necessarily all in New Hampshire, but I've actually had good dialogue with people on Facebook and changed minds. I got 4 women that were Occupy people. When we were kind of joining with the New Hampshire occupiers, and I convinced 4 of the Occupy women to join a Second Amendment shoot.
Everybody likes guns. They're always fun to get out there. It's like shooting off fire.
Yeah, and and more recently, I had a guy who hated the. Had really bad words for the Free State Project, and I think I converted him. He's on the seacoast, but
are you sure you aren't overestimating the impact you're having on these people? Because converting someone, that's a pretty strong term.
I got to admit, Dan actually changed my mind on something once that I was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you remember this, don't you? Sorry, I called you by.
Go ahead.
The person whose name is not Dan told me that no, we were talking about whether that time that I got arrested for trying to film outside Joe Biden's event, and
right.
they were gonna offer me, I don't know, they were gonna file it or something like that. Instead of going forward with any fines or anything.
Oh, you listened to me about?
Yeah, you said
pursuing that.
You advocated no, I should not let them file it. I should go ahead and fight. And I think you might have been the deciding factor because I really was on the fence as to what as long as I'm not actually having to help the government, I'm not necessarily against them filing. So, but anyway, we went ahead and took it to court, and it was the whole shebang, and they prosecuted me, and then we ate their lunch.
Yeah, good for you. Did we actually do that over Facebook, or was that?
No, it wasn't over Facebook. It was in person. We were talking in person right before.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a fan of using Facebook.
I'm out there too. I'm meeting people, and I go and have a beverage every now and again, and and I sit and talk with people, and I've gathered Facebook friends that way. People that
maybe I'm just too jaded, because I go out, I have beverages with people, and if anybody talks about the Free State Project, it's the last thing I want to talk about. Honestly,
I dance around the issues as much as possible.
If a local talks to me, if somebody I don't know is talking to me about the Free State Project, I'm generally, I don't generally want to have the conversation because, oh God, there's been. Whatever. I have the perception that there's enough bad press. No, seriously. I
do like talking about it.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I like I said, maybe I'm jaded.
I mean, I just wish there were more to talk about. I wish there's more of a level of activity.
A lot of times people seem to really listen to me, and I try to kind of bring them in and stuff. But I have a lot to say about it. And I'll go on, I've had some really good interaction. I had one guy buy me my appetizers and a couple of beverages.
Well, I'm not going to say
had a conversation.
I'm not going to say it's impossible to reach people, but I mean, again, what you talk about in Bad Slave. Thank you so much for the call. What you're talking about there, this guy who buys you appetizers, you're obviously not having that conversation on Facebook, right? I'm not convinced.
Oh, yeah, I believe you need words, audio to convince people.
And I'm
a radio guy, right?
Yeah, and you can certainly reach people on Facebook to some extent, but I think all of that is missing the point. I think it's just about exposure when we start talking about using Facebook and things like that, because when a person first hears these ideas of liberty, they're so foreign to what they're used to that we sound absolutely crazy. But the second time they hear them, it sounds a little less crazy.
Agreed.
And by the 50th or 60th time, it becomes almost normal. And I think that's where the value is of using these sorts of platforms. But as far as convincing people directly, it isn't going to happen.
Well, people adults aren't convinced of much, whether it's politics or sports or whatever they're passionate about. Usually they've developed whatever their opinion is. This is one of the reasons that so many political action groups dump so much money into colleges, because they want to get, they want to convert whomever it is that they can convert at that moment when they're actually making up their mind about something, because they believe they've targeted that as the pivotal time. And I'm not prepared to disagree that about that age is important.
The Free Staters converted me too. I wasn't much more than a neocon when I started getting interested in this project. And by the time I'd moved here, they had completely changed my mind on many subjects. And then by the time now I'm more libertarian than they are. So.
I would agree that there is a subset of humans that have their minds open still and can listen to logical arguments. However, what I find is that in the absence of continued bolstering of that opinion, they just kind of drift off and go back to doing the things that they were doing. People listen to Free Talk Live for a year, 2, 3, and then they're like, well, I found out about this liberty thing and it's never going to happen, so off I go. And they might philosophically, I believe with you. I agree with you guys. However, from a practical standpoint, X is never going to happen. All right.
What might work too is we just need to get some rich people to move here, like Bruce Fenton did. We multiply that a little bit. I think that might be the thing that puts us over the top.
Yeah, when it comes to winning campaigns, all it takes is a certain amount of money. Then you could get enough people in. And I agree with you, Dave. If you're going to all I'm saying is something needs to be implemented that changes the course of politics in New Hampshire today. The Free Staters have changed the course, but they need to change it more in order to be successful.
All right. Well,
I would agree.
I'll work on something.
The biggest example I've seen is that cannabis isn't even legal here in New Hampshire.
Right. You can move to Denver, Seattle, L.A. You can move so many places.
You can move to Vermont.
Awesome places.
You can move 10 minutes to the south or to the west, whatever, and find legal pot.
Yeah, kratom's legal here and it's illegal in Vermont. And then now it's starting to get harder and harder to have certain weapons in Vermont. So taxes. Overall, this is still the freest place, except for occasionally it gets beat by.
I'm not going to horse trade my rights and my freedoms. I'm not going to say, okay, it's fine that I don't have this freedom because I have this other one.
I think it's hard to retrofit the state. Okay, and that's what we're doing. The state is an organization. Its organizational model, the way it was designed, was to control humans domestically. Like, that's the whole point of it. It is an organization that claims a monopoly, privilege, and the use of violence in a given landmass. It is an authoritarian structure. And to take the authoritarian structure and, tweak this and turn that and do the things and make that authoritarian structure freedom-oriented, that is a colossal task that the Free State Project has set before itself.
You're not wrong. And an impossible one, I would argue. I mean, since that is counter to what the state literally exists to
It's
do.
impossible if nobody does it. That much is for certain.
Excellent point. 855-450-FREE is in freedom. It's 855-450-3733.
Don't you hate that feeling in the pit of your stomach when the police pull you over? Most people have no idea how to handle it properly, and they promptly get fed into the municipal fee-generating meat grinder. Or maybe you recall that feeling you get when you go to the mailbox and see one or more letters from the IRS. You get a sense of impending doom, don't you? So let me ask you, if you could learn how to use the law to beat the IRS, traffic tickets, almost any courtroom scenario, collectors, credit card debt, and even mortgage debt because of fraud perpetrated against you, would that be worth knowing about? Don't laugh. Investigate. Check out the life-changing benefits of the Lighthouse Law Club at their website, lighthouselaw.club. That's lighthouselaw.club. And while you're at it, visit the Lighthouse Law Club YouTube channel. You might be in for a pleasant surprise.
Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live, talk radio you control. Talk about whatever is on your mind. Give us a call at 855-450-3733. That's 855-450-FREE as in Free Talk Live. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Ridley,
and Mark.
And I'd like to move on to this discussion about, I think it's pronounced Huawei, the Chinese tech company.
Yeah, this is the one that like the Trump administration says is in cahoots with the government. Like there was something going on in Canada, spies. I don't know what the hell's going on.
They arrested one of Canada, that is, arrested one of Huawei's executives under spying charges, and they've now blacklisted the company. And now other American companies acting presumably on behalf of the federal government or in cahoots with it or whatever are actually adding Huawei to their own blacklist. Chip makers like Intel, Qualcomm, Xilinx, and Broadcom are said to have told their employees that they will not supply Huawei until further notice, evidently under the auspices that they're working for the Chinese government. So according to SCMP, that's the South China Morning Post.
SCMP, all right.
So it's not likely to be overly unbiased. Top U.S. corporations from chip makers to Google have frozen the supply of critical software and components to Huawei Technologies, complying with a Trump administration crackdown that threatens to choke off China's largest technology company. Now, they characterize it as sort of a directive from the United States. They didn't explicitly say that, but they said complying with a Trump administration crackdown.
Yeah.
I'm not aware, and there's nothing within this article that actually suggests that, we've actually, the United States government has gone through the process of saying, hey, look, you can't do business with this company. Now, I know that the federal government did today say that they are worried about the drones being used by sheriff's departments and things like that across the United States because something like 80% of them are purchased from Chinese companies. And they're worried that China is also using that information, even though that information is easily available on Google Maps, in order to map out the terrain and things like that. For what purposes? Who knows? Why would they be doing any of this? It seems like just a bunch of hysterical fear-mongering to me.
Yeah, I find the thing sort of all murky. I don't really understand it that well. So can you sort of reset it and make me understand what's going on with Huawei and why the Trump administration thinks that what they're doing and all this? I just don't know.
I will attempt to.
Okay.
I'm no expert on it either because I generally don't care what the administration is doing because it tends to not affect me.
Imperial politics. It's all imperial politics.
Essentially.
Right. Yeah.
But so the 2016 election, from what I could tell, it basically...
Our allies on Tatooine are now the rebels on Tatooine, right? I mean, this is really what I don't know.
Yeah. I'm into national politics, and my nation is New Hampshire.
I wouldn't even go that far, I don't think. I consider myself largely apolitical, which is, a weird thing to say doing Free Talk Live and Call to Freedom.
Talking about issues is different than being apolitical.
I would agree. But
having run for office in the last year and a half, I think probably I don't know that you could really lay a claim to being apolitical.
Yeah.
Okay, fair point. Well, I was running with the intention of not enforcing the law. Is that not apolitical?
I don't know.
But anyway, so as far as I could tell, the 2016 election basically came down to whether you wanted war with China or war with Russia. Trump was pretty clear in his hatred of Russia, saying that they weren't fair trading partners or whatever. They inflate their currency. China? Yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry. And Hillary was pretty clear about wanting war with Russia. I think she even said it during one of the debates that she wanted to actually launch an invasion on Russia. I don't recall exactly which debate it was. I
wonder why they made memes that sank her candidacy.
Right.
or were aimed at sinking her candidacy. What sank her candidacy was stacking the deck at the DNC, was putting in, replacing the president and taking the old president and promising him the Veep seat and doing a bunch of things that looked really fishy. And then Sanders doesn't get through. I'm not claiming that she cheated and made it so Sanders couldn't win. I am claiming that she has stacked the deck. And if she needed to, she would have.
Yeah, the election was stolen and manipulated. It was stolen from Bernie Sanders by Hillary Clinton.
Yeah,
that's
why she lost. America doesn't like a cheater.
He would be president right now. He was the one that the normal setup, the way the system works. He would have been president if the system had actually been functioning.
So. No, I think Trump would have slaughtered Sanders. I think the best way to ensure that Democrats do not win an election is to run an avowed socialist.
I would say that that Trump was the worst candidate the Republicans could have put up, although he won and everything. He was the worst candidate they could have put up, and that he was the only one that Sanders could have beaten, and he would have. The margin was narrow, just razor thin for Trump's win, and there were enough people, like I believe it was hundreds of people separated a Trump win on a loss. I'd have to look it up just to make sure, because it's electoral votes. It's always very strange.
Right.
Clinton won the majority, but lost because of the Electoral College. And what matters is, I know there was one state where the margin was very thin as to whether or not it won one or the other, but I couldn't tell you for sure. But the margins were remarkably thin, and if enough people had gone to the polls. And a lot of Sanders voters just sat home. They voted for, they voted for the Green Party, they voted for the Libertarian Party, or they sat home. They just couldn't bring themselves to vote for Clinton because they campaigned against her so hard, and their stomachs were turned against her. So I would say, that Sanders would have won.
I don't think so. Okay. I think the political climate in the United States is such that even today there is still a large degree of hatred for socialism, especially upfront socialism.
Okay.
Americans do seem to like socialism when it's portrayed to them in the way that Trump portrays it. Let's build a wall and, do all this other stuff and free college and things like that. But I think most of the states that actually went blue for Hillary Clinton, they would have flipped hard red if we ran an actual socialist, because socialism through most of their lives was presented as something that was absolutely destructive to their entire way of life.
We do understand that both the Democrats and Republicans are just different flavors of socialism, right?
Yes, but they don't.
I understand.
The average voter doesn't.
No, I agree. I think that I do agree that the embracement of the term socialism is too new in its implementation to be necessarily successful. I won't back off my statement that I think Sanders would have beaten Trump.
I have to believe he wouldn't.
Okay.
Because
there was this organization that has successfully predicted all the winners, way in advance, for years or whatnot. They projected Sanders, and I believed it. I think he probably was the one that. Again,
the New York Times said that Hillary was going to win the day of the election. I mean, as early as November 2015, I said that Trump was going to win both the primary and the election, and I proved to be right on both counts.
I predicted a Trump win in the primary, but I couldn't. I was gobsmacked when he actually did win.
538, of course, they compiled all sorts of statistics and data, and they said, oh, yeah, Hillary, it's hers to lose. She's going to win. You can take it to the bank. And Trump was laughed at and mocked.
And she did.
I don't agree that it was ever hers, though. Okay. I think she believed it was.
The two most hated people in the country. That's who we had to pick from.
It was like the Simpsons are prophetic, when they have the one-eyed aliens with tentacles saying, "What are you going to do? Vote for a third party?"
No, never said Bob Dole. Never said Bob Dole.
It just shows how awful our choices were. It's like they went around and found the very worst, most undesirable candidates and ran them.
But Bob Dole never says I. Bob Dole says Bob Dole. Bob Dole never said Bob Dole. Never said Bob Dole.
It's a funny bit.
The alarming thing about the whole 2016 election is that it proved to be entirely true. That if we had a choice between Stalin and Hitler, one of them would have won the White House. No matter who a third-party candidate was, we would have put one of those two maniacs back into power.
Right. The Libertarians got more votes than they had ever gotten in a previous election. And
that was running the extremely weak Gary Johnson.
And I don't think that was 5%.
No. I think it was 3% at the end of the day, wasn't it?
Pretty good.
Well,
doesn't change anything.
I don't know if I would call it pretty good either. But you're right. Nothing changed. This is Free Talk Live. Tell us what's on your mind. 855-450-FREE as in freedom, or use the Discord calling lines, which you can find at discord.freetalklive.com. Again, that's 855-450-3733. This is Free Talk Live. Take control of the airways. Give us a call and tell us what's on your mind. 855-450-3733. That's 855-450-FREE as in freedom. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Ridley,
and Mark.
And Mark, you have something on your mind.
Yeah, I want to talk about Freedom Fest. It's the largest liberty-oriented gathering in the world. Freedom Fest theme this year is the Wild West. Liberty and opportunity, or lawlessness and violence? Both. Well, they're going to have Penn Jillette, Candace Owens, Lenore Skenazy, John Mackey, Kevin O'Leary, and Kevin Harrington of Shark Tank, Stephen Moore, Grover Norquist, libertarians, conservatives, liberals, and just open-minded people mingling together to hear real debates and share real solutions and converse freely. It's July 17th through the 20th at the Paris Hotel in Las Vegas. So definitely a lot of fun had by all. Go to freedomfest.com/FTL. Get your tickets now. Join us. freedomfest.com/FTL. Use code FTL50 and save $50 off your ticket. If you're not yet convinced, and, well, I'd love to see you there. I really would. Go to freedomfest.com/FTL and get the 5 best speeches from last year. Do a little research. See whether it's the sort of place you want to go. Judge Napolitano, Alan Dershowitz, Charlie Kirk, Heather McDonald, and John Mackey. That's the former CEO of Whole Foods, and they're all for free there. It's freedomfest.com/FTL, July 17th through the 20th, Paris Hotel in Las Vegas, freedomfest.com/FTL.
That's definitely a lot of big names. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be one awesome event.
It is. There's no doubt. It's a great event, and it's not cheap to go. But
well, it's never cheap to go to Vegas.
Check it out, and I think you're going to have a wonderful time. They have lots of sort of investment opportunities there. If you're the sort of person who has the opportunity to do investments, well, probably it's worth going just to see what the opportunities are.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
So you also have the story about Trump, evidently, admitting that there is a military-industrial complex, which doesn't make him the first president to do it, but hopefully it will serve I say hopefully, even as I know it won't happen, but hopefully could serve as a reminder to people that this is a real thing and not necessarily a conspiracy theory.
CNSnews.com. President Trump, speaking about hostile foreign powers, Iran especially, told Fox News that if he can solve tensions economically, he prefers to do that to a military solution. But he said he's up against a military-industrial complex in Washington.
I mean, didn't he mostly put that military-industrial... didn't he surround himself with it, with like John Bolton and previously Mad Dog Mattis and several others who are just intensely pro-war?
No one has stood against the military-industrial complex as a seated president the way that Trump has been willing to since since Carter.
What about JFK?
JFK's dead. No, I'm sorry.
Right.
Carter's more recent than JFK. I wasn't alive for that, so I really wouldn't be able to speak to it one way or the other.
Isn't Carter like the only American president that did not involve us in a new armed conflict?
Yep, there's no war under the Carter administration. There was
unless you count the invasion of Iran, by a small number of troops. Yeah.
Right, it was a rescue mission because Iran was holding U.S. hostages.
Those were bureaucrats, though.
Yeah, and they've you understood. Yes, they were, and
we're not bystanders.
They sent in a helicopter, and of U.S. military interventions in my lifetime, an armed intervention to get bureaucrats out of a hostile country that was taken over, like in a rebellion, seems like the best one that I've heard. I'm only comparing cancers here. Like, it's like looking on your arm if you're colored in like
it's skin cancer,
melanoma,
yeah.
And you're like, oh yeah, I like the shape of this one best, right? Like, there's like 20 blotches on your arm, and you're like, this one looks kind of like Goofy from Disney World. I like it best. So I don't like it, but I like it best.
But it's funny how we only talk about that when we don't even talk about the successful rescues that were undertaken by Ross Perot, when that was private.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that. What can you tell me about it?
Yeah, I don't know a lot about it either, but there were some private workers there that got stranded, and their company got them out.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Huh. And it was like a lot of cloak and dagger and interesting stuff. There was a movie,
they got trapped in Iran?
A docudrama movie about it. Trapped in Iran right after the revolution, yeah.
Yeah. And these things wouldn't have been necessary. It's worth pointing out, wouldn't have been necessary if the United States hadn't been, all up in Iran's business with instituting the Shah and his terrible depredations.
Oh, yeah. What's Iran going to do? Are they going to create a coup like Americans did to them? Are they going to shoot down an airliner full of civilians like the Americans did to them? Are they going to have one of their allies invade the country like Americans did to them? Maybe, but I don't see it. Iran. Is Iran ever invaded anyone in the last 200-300 years?
They're not exactly non-hostile, but no,
they say mean things.
They do bad things too.
They hurt our feelings.
They do. They support, if you want to use the term, terrorist organizations. Non-state actors. They will arm non-state actors to do things, and there's something going on in the military.
Well, so will the American government.
Oh, I'm not claiming that they won't.
I know. I'm just trying to.
I just don't want to think that anybody think that I'm claiming that Iran's over there like some Vestal Virgin, fanning herself.
I do declare.
I can't believe this. The United States just keeps on doing terrible things to me. It does, but they've done what they could to lash back, as nation states will.
And they treat their own people terribly. They're rated as like the third least free country in the world or something.
Not delightful. I don't know. No U.S. statesman is really sort of putting out the path to, good feelings for Iran, Russia, North Korea. Nobody's saying, okay, do this, do this, do this, do this. And then we'll treat you like we treat everybody else, and it'll be awesome. Because, for one, remember what the United States, through the World Banking Organizations, treats the rest of the world like a bunch of serfs, like cows to be milked. And I can see why these countries are like, whoa, I mean, the step up from here is being treated like a whipping boy? Awesome. Give me some of that. So it's not a surprise to me that they do that, but the military-industrial complex is always ready to come after you if you're, if you show your teeth in any way.
Yeah, if you refuse to fall in line and submit yourself to American dominance, they will force you to.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't have any good solution for a country for that. There's basically three sovereign states in the world. There's Russia, China, and the United States. And I'm not entirely sure about Russia.
Well, there's
Switzerland, you can kiss my butt with your FATCA compliance.
There's a series of solutions, and it's not super difficult, I think. I mean, the fact that Costa Rica was able to do so well when the Americans were messing with the Soviets and the Soviets were messing with the Americans right next door, Costa Rica didn't even have an army, and they managed to stay out of it. So it can be done. In Switzerland, 1940.
That doesn't claim sovereignty, though.
Costa Rica isn't exactly a first world country at this point either. I mean, they're not an economic powerhouse or a major player. This is Free Talk Live. If you disagree, call in and tell us. It's 855-450-3733 or discord.freetalk.
Are you concerned that liberty, free market economics, and the values that made America great are no longer taught in schools? Well, so am I. So I got my son the Tuttle Twins children's book series.
My name is Jack, and I'm 11 years old, and I just started the Tuttle Twins. So far, I have learned that some people can use the government to ruin the economy and destroy people's businesses.
Give all the young people in your life a chance at reason and clear thought, because they're not going to get it at school. There are 9 books in the series, and each one teaches a set of ideas that children aren't getting elsewhere. Go to TuttleTwins.com and use coupon code FTL to get 40% off. Again, that's TuttleTwins.com.
This is Free Talk Live, talk radio you control. Tell us whatever is on your mind. This 855-450-FREE, as in Free Talk Live. That's 855-450-3733. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Ridley,
and Mark. Bitcoin.com is your premier source for everything that's related to cryptocurrencies. And Bitcoin.com can help you to choose a wallet, buy some Bitcoin Cash or other cryptocurrencies, show you where you can spend your crypto, your Bitcoin Cash. They can also read you. You can also read the latest news or engage with the community on their forum. Learn more about the great website at Bitcoin.com. Like to also announce soon, on June 4th, they're having the launch of local.bitcoin.com, and this will allow you to buy, sell, and trade with your neighbors in Bitcoin Cash. It's a very big deal. Really.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's about as big as it gets.
This is news to me. This is awesome.
Yeah, actually, is that so? You can make a an end run around Coinbase. You could take your money, put it into.
Well, it sounds like an end run
PayPal
around local Bitcoins.
Yeah. And Local Bitcoins is not a terrible organization. I'm certainly not, wouldn't claim that that's the case.
No, but they're Bitcoin only.
Yeah.
And local.bitcoin.com will support Bitcoin Cash.
I'm surprised. I would suspect exclusively.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Local.bitcoin.com.
See, it seems like, for me, it seems like I don't want to use Coinbase. I can't get money out of crypto easily, it seems like. And this sounds like from what I understand, it's compatible with PayPal. So you would be able to take your Bitcoin and turn it into PayPal dollars.
You can with localbitcoins.com. I would not recommend using PayPal. I do it, but it's only for very small amounts. I certainly wouldn't sell even $100 at a time to somebody using PayPal. It is instant, but they can get their money back and not actually give you back your Bitcoins.
Right. So
they can dispute it with PayPal, and of course you'll give them negative feedback, and in the long run it will hurt their reputation. But if they just do 5 or 6 big trades for $10,000 worth of Bitcoin or something like that, then they end up with both the cash and the Bitcoin. They don't have to do it many times before they can just back out entirely. So PayPal is one of the highest risk ways of doing business on local Bitcoins.
Yeah, it's about as high risk as you can get with it. And you're right. I wouldn't, if it's for $20 and you can afford to lose $20, that you're trying to get $20 for lunch or something, then, maybe it's worth it because you can skip lunch because you're like me and probably overweight. So whatever. I've
never had an issue with it. but I only do business with people who have like thousands of verified trades. So they're not going, if they built up that kind of reputation, they're not going to throw it away over a $40 purchase of Bitcoins. It's just not going to happen. Maybe for $40,000, but I wouldn't sell $40,000 worth of Bitcoin in general, but certainly not using something like PayPal.
Right.
So I want, what do you know what all payment methods will be supported by local.bitcoin.com?
No, you're gonna have to check it out. I don't know that they know everything. June 4th is the rollout date, so it's still a couple weeks away.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, though.
Yeah, it's important stuff.
Yeah, that's exciting news.
Yep.
This is the first time I've heard about it. I'm very happy to hear it.
Expect that kind of thing from Free Talk Live.
Awesome. So we've been talking about the military-industrial complex and the various virtues of neutrality when it actually plays out as neutral. Of course, the United States has a history of pretending to be neutral, while it does as much as possible to be passive-aggressive, like with Japan. And it actually was only during like the last 2 years that I realized that all of the crap I was taught in school about World War II is actually crap. You know, they painted the United States as an isolationist country prior to World War II.
They painted it that way during it too. And, I mean, that oh my dear, I don't know why these Japanese people done bombed us. I don't get it. You know, and
I bought it, and it wasn't until shortly after Ron Paul's final primary campaign that I realized, he's not an actual isolationist either.
Right.
Neither was the United States.
Yeah, the United States wasn't isolationist prior to World War II, and all you have to do is Google the term McCulloch Memo. Just Google McCulloch Memo, and
is that the one about trying to maneuver the Japanese into shooting first?
Right. There is a Roosevelt administration memorandum that is now just part of history that we all understand that in fact, they, the Roosevelt administration and very likely FDR himself, we don't know how he could have, we don't have proof that he saw it, but we don't know how he couldn't have seen it either. And that they, had a plan for instigating Japan into war. And surprise, 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 that plan is almost word for word what happened.
Yep. Well, it's not surprising. I mean, we had like British generals coming over and saying, look, unless the United States enters this war, it's lost. Germany is going to win. We're not going to be able to overcome it. Eventually, we're going to be defeated.
We need help to stop the Nazis so that Stalin can murder tens of thousands of people.
Yeah. Well, essentially. But I mean, that's exactly what we did. Is we made.
There was something special about the Nazis, though. I mean, you saw how peace came about. Peace came about to some extent with the Russians. It was a Cold War, but there wasn't constant shooting. That probably wasn't possible.
If the United States would have entered
under Hitler, all you could do was either kill them or join them.
Yeah, I don't know that. So you're telling me that what you're saying is that somehow the Nazis are superior to the Soviets, and I'm not sure I'm ready to say that.
I'm saying the opposite.
The Nazis are inferior to the Soviets.
You can actually make agreements with the Soviets, and they might actually sit there for a while and not invade anybody else.
Well, why don't you just wait for Hitler to finally take out the Russians and then go in and mop up?
That would have been better, probably.
Yeah.
And Churchill wanted to do this.
I don't know if I would want to characterize that as better.
Well, see, Churchill's plan I like better. What he wanted to do, instead of invading France, he wanted to invade Yugoslavia and Italy and the islands and the Adriatic and do stuff there, because that way you become between the Russians and the Berlin, and you're in a situation where now, instead of the Russians running all of Europe, they're back to where they normally are, right? So you wouldn't have had a Poland being taken over by Russia and that sort of thing.
Well,
I would agree that the way that Russia handled the end of World War II was imperialistic, obviously.
Yep.
But they did kick the Nazis out of the territories that they, in the sense of war, conquered fair and square.
And then the Russians occupied all of it.
Yes.
And turned it into the Warsaw Pact and the Soviet bloc.
But so did we. The only difference is that we spoke a language they liked.
You couldn't even say what you wanted to say.
You can't say what you want to say now.
You could say pretty much anything you wanted to say in Germany right after the war.
I challenge you to go to Germany and say you support Nazism.
That's what I said, pretty much everything. And here you can't say that.
I'm with Dave on this one.
The Soviets were not like that.
That that demonstrably Europe is a better choice over the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union fell because it was awful. But why did we have to go in on the side of awful people to go after awful people? Here's a little clue, people. When armed, dangerous murderers are fighting it out, leave them alone. You don't have to actually do anything.
Yeah, and
Great
so many
Britain
times
was not going to be invaded by Germany. Germany couldn't have possibly have held all of Europe. Couldn't have done it. Not possible. And the way that they fought their way into Europe, they could have fought their way into Europe as soon as they saw that it was clear that Stalin was going to fall. Stalin was a bad person before Hitler came along, and he didn't get any better afterwards. Stalin killed more people, responsible for more civilian deaths than Hitler ever could have imagined being responsible for.
Yeah.
So, bad people doing bad things. I just don't get involved in this crap.
I would definitely agree.
If the United States hadn't been involved in Russia's business in World War I, likely the Soviet Union wouldn't have been created either. If the United States hadn't been involved in China's business during World War II, Red China wouldn't have existed. U.S. intervention doesn't have good history.
855-450-3733. This is Free Talk Live. Give us a call. Tell us whatever's on your mind at 855-450-3733. If you call in fast enough, there's still time to get it out there on the air. With you tonight is Aria,
Ridley,
and Mark.
Who is epping the show tonight?
Tonight's featured amplifier is Harry. And that's the thing about our amplifiers. He's a silver amplifier, by the way.
He's what?
What's that? Silver.
Okay.
And I presume male, too. I said he.
Did you just assume his gender, Mark?
I did. Harry, like so many others, amplify Free Talk Live by going to amp.freetalklive.com. I presume it's because Harry likes the message of liberty being spread around the world, far and wide, by one of the largest voices for liberty on the planet, Free Talk Live. 200 radio stations now, and we're proud of it. Go to amp.freetalklive.com and do as Harry has done. Thank you.
And that stands for advertise, market, and promote.
That's correct.
Right?
We won't
and
spend that on
to promote the show.
Right. We're not spending that on pizzas or anything like that.
No, but tomorrow is Bitcoin Pizza Day, as I hear it. No. Oh, Wednesday. Well, we're celebrating it tomorrow.
Well, celebrate with pizza every day. I think that this weekend or something was National Pizza Day too.
Really?
Yeah, there was a National Pizza Day. So
I wasn't aware of that. So we've been talking about the war machine and the challenges that we face as libertarians in attempting to cause any change to it, and how we've gotten to this point, especially when we go out to the breaks, we end up carrying all these conversations, but especially how we got to this point, how one intervention led to another which precipitated another.
And these are all U.S. interventions.
Yeah, and these are
talking about.
And these, in a sense, they're like the least bad things that the central government of the United States has done, right? Like stopping the Kaiser, stopping Hitler. It did happen. They did do those two things.
But the results of them were catastrophic.
Yes, it might have been. In the first case, it's almost certain that staying out of World War I would have prevented World War II. In terms of staying out of World War II, I think it would have been a little more difficult. But
I'm not even sure.
But it did result in Stalin running Europe, basically.
Right. I've also seen scholarly pieces that make the argument that Germany in World War I wasn't really a bad guy. They were certainly the bad guy in the United States, because the United States tends to be Anglophiles, especially at that time in history. But there's not a lot of good examples of Germany being terrible at that time compared to
they were pretty terrible. The only real difference, I think you could make the argument, the only real difference between the World War I Germans and the World War II Germans is there was no genocide by the World War I.
It's a really important
part.
Yeah,
that is a pretty big difference.
And there were far fewer civilian deaths in World War I than there were in World War II.
That was a reason of lack of long-range aircraft.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all I'm saying. Is that Germany isn't demonstrably worse. I've seen the scholarly work. I'm not an expert there, but I don't really know what that you can pin on. I know why people hate Hitler, but pinning on the Kaiser. Well, there was that. There's some atrocities that occurred when they went through Belgium and that sort of thing.
It was pretty systemic.
Meaning?
Well, they burned down the medieval library at Louvre just because they heard a rumor that there had been some gunfire. And this was, they were burning their own texts, right? These were German texts, English texts, all this stuff from the Middle Ages. They just destroyed it all one day. And then, taking people out and shooting them because something happened on the other side of town randomly. That was common.
The Schlieffen Plan was terrible. However, it was also poorly planned, and so they had to do crappy things to keep that the whole idea going. They were behind, behind times, and they just wanted to keep, can't stop the supply lines. You got to keep going, and the Maginot Line was, preventing stuff. Was the Maginot Line
the pre-existing?
The pre-existing
at
line
that location, which was later the Maginot Line.
So the series of forts that were not yet called the Maginot Line, all I'm saying is that France and England wanted to fight and they got it.
I don't know. I'm
not
convinced. I'm more pro-Allied.
I've gathered that. Let's go to the phones, however. We've got Joe, who is calling in about Trump from New York. Joe, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hello. So I was wondering if you guys had heard about Justin Amash, potentially the Libertarian frontrunner for president, saying that he thinks Trump should be impeached.
This is the first I've heard about Amash being the front runner for the LP.
Yeah, that's news.
Well, that's what I'm hearing. Nicholas Sarwark has apparently been going to him and pleading with him to run, and he's been making public statements saying he's the next Ron Paul or something.
Well, Amash's name tends to come up with Ron Paul mentioned several times, so I'm not surprised at that. But I knew that one of the politicians, let's say GOP leadership, calls out Amash after impeachment push. Romney GOP rep Amash is courageous to call for Trump's impeachment. Amash's first GOP lawmaker to state Trump is impeachable. Okay, that's what I thought that I was. I just want to make sure that I was reminded on this when we called in. I don't know what Amash is going to do as far as a run for president. I do not keep up with this. I haven't read, Amash has access to this Mueller report, and I don't. If Amash says that there's an impeachable offense, then I'd be interested in knowing what it is. But, I think the
allegation was obstruction of justice was the impeachable offense.
Yeah, I think obstruction of justice is a crappy charge. I think that when somebody is being threatened with jail, that you could expect them to act in, fashions that is obstructing your investigation, right? That's what I'm going to do. You threaten to throw me in a cage, and I'm going to try to obstruct your investigation. And I probably am not going to I wouldn't call any of this crap I've seen justice.
Certainly not.
So I don't know what Amash says. I don't know why he says what he says, but I find him to be one of the more palatable liars and thieves in Washington, D.C., more so than I find Trump. So, I'm interested in this catfight.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I've heard some people say, he's just doing this because he wants to win because he needs national attention so that he can get 3% of the vote if he's the Libertarian nominee for president.
Oh, you want a prediction on that? Oh, as a Libertarian, he's not going to win.
Yeah. No, he won't win the primary.
Yeah.
Bill Weld will get it.
Oh, you don't think? Yeah, but that's what I've heard. If that's the thing, I guess you got to do what you got to do to win or not win. But I've also, if you legitimately believe that Trump should be impeached, I think he's gravely misguided.
They should all be impeached.
Right. I mean, start with whomever you want.
For different reasons.
Okay.
He shouldn't be impeached for the Russiagate thing, because Russiagate is very much about censorship and wanting sanctions on Russia. I
can't find the big smoking gun in the Russiagate thing. I mean, I can't find this horrible thing that was going on. But I don't know everything, and I don't pay that much attention. I got a life to live, and that life is not going to be digging through these reams and politicals and digging into the. Russia's become Democrat for Benghazi, and you can go as deep as you want in these rabbit holes.
That is the most accurate thing I've ever heard.
And I'm just so bored with this stuff. I mean, if Amash feels like this is what's going to get him into the White House, then, well, great. I'd love to see Amash in the White House. Do I want to see one of these Democrats in the White House that I'm seeing? Nope, sure don't.
Yeah.
I don't know
that. Do you think he's going to win the LP nomination?
I think he could win the LP nomination if he was to give up his seat and never win it again. Give up any political career that he hopes to have in the future. Sure, he could have the LP nomination. Whoop-a-doo.
Why are we talking about pretend politics?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think he would win even if he attempted to. I think Bill Weld is going to get it. I don't want Bill Weld to get it. I want Bill Weld to screw off and die.
I think Amash could beat Weld in the nomination process.
Yeah, I think so too, because
I think Weld has more money, and that's why he won last time.
But Larry Sharp came 82 votes away from beating Weld. Larry Sharp at the time had zero name recognition, zero money, and had never held political office before, and he came 82 votes away from winning the vice presidential nomination over Bill Weld.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for the call.
Stop wasting your time on this and just move to New Hampshire if you want freedom.
Well, I think
that's certainly the best approach.
You'll be a lot more effective than being worried about libertarian national politics.
Yeah. I don't have much to do with the LP these days, and I've been happier every day since.
I think that I love that they give me the opportunity to have somebody to vote for besides the two main liars and thieves.
Thank you for listening. This has been Free Talk Live. Same time, same place tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We'll be back.
This is another edition of the Edgington Post Show. I am Mark Edge, bringing you another interview for Free Talk Live. Today I have with me Iga Ronald Labega from... Iga, you're in Uganda, but where are you? Iga, can you hear me?
I'm in Uganda, Kampala.
Yep. Kampala. So tell me, tell me what you're doing.
Okay, I'm National Coordinator for Students for Liberty Uganda. I just mobilized this young liberal team of young professionals, some graduates, and some university students. We are moving to advocate free society, individual liberty, and we are doing all this under the umbrella of Students for Liberty Africa, more particularly Uganda. We are following the principles of liberty while using the classical liberal ideas to make an impact and change on our communities and the leadership systems of this country.
What's the difference between Students for Liberty Uganda and Students for Liberty in the United States? Because I'm familiar with that organization. Is it just the same organization for Uganda?
This one is just particularly for Uganda. We are all the same, but as you know, it is set in each and every country where it is needed. So we normally say African Students for Liberty Uganda. Someone can say African Students for Liberty Kenya and Rwanda, like that, Tanzania and so on. So it is a bigger organization but divided in countries.
So do you have Students for Liberty organizations at all the major schools there in Uganda?
Yes, we have major schools that we operate. One of the universities is Makerere University, one of the biggest universities in East Africa. We also have Tombogo University, we have Kumba University, Fisheries, and so many other. Mbalala University of Science and Technology, and all these universities are chapters of young libertarians advocating for liberty and rule of law and so on.
Uganda isn't exactly known as the freest place on the planet. I've heard from people who live there that the political process there is a little less than accessible for the average person. What are you guys able to do besides? I mean, you're teaching students about liberty, but what's your end game here?
Of course, Uganda's government is one of the unfavorable government that probably we have ever seen, and not only to the world but also to the people and citizens in this country. So what we do, we always try to work with them, actually with some challenges, but what we do is to teach and introduce these liberal ideas, liberal understanding, so that we can find a way of surviving and working with this kind of government. Of course, our work is not so simple and not everyone can easily understand, but what we do is we can have that better government in a liberal way, in a liberal understanding, hoping that probably in the future when we change government, we can have those leaders who can think in a liberal way than the ones we have currently.
So I hear a little bit of audio stuff in the back. I sometimes it makes it a little difficult to hear. Now these students are, they're getting education. Is this the Students for Liberty basically the only way that they're finding out about the ideas of liberty and libertarianism?
Yeah, actually for now, this is the only organization that is advocating for liberty, and many of the students in Uganda are just hearing it from us. The first time actually. Before we had Students for Liberty, we didn't know about this. Even myself, I didn't know. So this is why we are making it in a different way. Many people are hearing it for the first time in the country.
I know you're running some kind of fundraiser. You're looking to raise some small amount of money here, I saw, and you're trying to send people off to classes and stuff like that. What are your goals here with this fundraiser?
Now we together with some friends of mine in the USA, we were trying to find a way of getting some extra money to move our projects and our campaigns further. We have been concentrating only in Kampala with some 6 and 7 universities only in the capital city, but then we just found it that we need to move the whole country to make this effective each and everywhere, and giving opportunity to other youths and volunteers of liberty to understand what exactly must be done. So we are introducing what we called a liberal bus, a liberty bus, that is going to move in the western, eastern, and southern parts of the country, teaching and introducing the ideas of liberty to each and everyone. And we are trying to see the way to visit all these universities so that we can get that reasonable number of younger advocates to see that our mission can be achieved there, either in a shortest period of time or in a long period of time, but at least to make sure that we can cover the country with the liberal understanding. And we are also looking at it in a way that we need to create some public libraries so that people can always come and students come to read about these classical liberal ideas, and more books of reference so that they can understand fully about liberty, and then we can move our window to that angle. This is the reason why.
That's great.
Yes,
you're doing great stuff. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change the website hope.freetalklive.com. That's hope.freetalklive.com. I'm going to change it to your GoFundMe. You're looking to raise about $3,400. And I don't know everybody who's donated here, but I know several people who've donated. 3 of them out of the 6 right now. I know those guys are good guys. I know they're working hard here, especially Glenn and Jack. I'm going to throw in a few bucks on this, and then I'm going to ask other people to come look at this campaign and see whether they can come in and throw in a little money for you too. It's not much, and if you can get this education going on in Uganda, I think you're going to have a real opportunity, because at some point or another, the government has to change.
Yes, definitely. And this is what we are looking at. We are having a government that is more than 30 years old, and it is the same people. These old men and women are just not making any fundamental change to the country and to the people, and more especially the young citizens of this country, including myself. So we are seeing that maybe when God saves us and they can go, then let us have those good leaders, because if we replace them with other people who don't understand liberty, then we are going to remain in the same. But when we have those leaders who are liberals, then we can definitely have that fundamental change that we are looking for. This is mainly the point why we are all doing this. And we have dedicated ourselves and given all our time for this.
Iga, you are a hero, and I thank you so much for what you're doing over there to help other people, because liberty isn't for the individual. When you're getting out and advocating for liberty, you're not trying to help yourself. You could help yourself in lots of different ways. You're trying to help other people, and I thank you for it, Iga.
Thank you so much, very much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Bye-bye.
Welcome. Thank you, too.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.